how to solve 90% of gut issues by targeting the foundations. We're going to go through prevalence, how common this is, how gut connects to immunity, to mental health, to your neurotransmitters and hormones, the biggest drivers and predictors of the most common gut issues in the world, from IBD to SIBO. How you can educate and support your clients better, how to communicate them better, the connection between the gut and the brain, the severe impacts of stress on the gut, functional anatomy and physiology. The phases of digestion are going to be really relevant and applicable to you for the rest of your life. You guys should probably remember that and use that, interact with it, and practical strategies. Now, question. What do you think, guys, when your clients think gut health? Can we just put some comments in the chat, some common conceptions around our clients' understanding of gut health? Yep, Leon, that's a good one. Tummy aches. Who says tummy aches in your clients and environment?
I still use that vocabulary.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but it's funny. You make me laugh, Leon. Bowel movement. Okay, great. Bloating. Okay, you'll see why I'm bringing this up. What your clients think, and some of them actually you guys mentioned, is very different from the reality of what is generally accurate or helpful. They have an understanding of the cliches and the stereotypes around the gut and the stomach and their symptoms. And what they're missing is the piece that you guys will bring in. And that's the functional anatomy and physiology. That's the connection to the immune system. That's the interlink between their mental health. That's the importance of detoxification. That's how the associations between breastfeeding and cesarean and later immune-related conditions later in life. So I want to point out to you that as a health professional and coach, there is important education that you guys do in the process of supporting your clients that you need to prioritize in this process. So it's not just giving them a functional guide that has the perfect supplements and the perfect nutrition. It's actually meeting them where they're at in regards to their beliefs and their understanding about the health issues that they're going through. And that may look like educating them on what SIBO is and its association with IBS. And that may look like explaining to them the basics that your stomach is not your gut, and that stomach pain and gut pain are two different experiences, and that bloating in the stomach and bloating down beneath where the intestines are is also a different generally experience. There is some more basic terminology that was important to also cover. We're not going to read out everything. I just want to highlight a few things. When I bring up these terms today, I just want you to refer back as I'm speaking about them, because obviously I'm not going to read out to them all and bore you, but I wanted to give you some terminology to refer to as we go along. Now, why the gut matters. The gut, I like the metaphor. You can think of it as a garden, and you can you can use it to explain to your clients. When weeds take over in a garden, it becomes problematic. And so there's an important standard I'd like to hold you guys to, and that's just not looking good on the outside. It's also improving your health on the inside. Because if there are problems at the level of the gut and the stomach, there are problems with nutrient absorptions, which means there are problems probably potentially everywhere. So one important thing I want to teach you guys is there is this bi-directional relationship between the gut and many organs within the human body. This is really exciting that we're able to learn this now. So you can see dysbiosis in the middle there. Pathogenic, problematic, bacterial overgrowth somewhere in the gut is a loose way to define that. The gut feels like something that's so disconnected from us. We don't really think about it unless you have problems. However, when there are problems, the connections that connect to the other body systems are large and varied. We see, there's one more text here. We see that disruption in the microbiota, in the microbiome, which is this massive colonization of different bacterial strains, largely in the large intestine. When we have problems in this area, malfunction in these areas, other systems are related. Skin issues, a lot of inflammatory issues. Matan talked about his respiratory issues earlier, mitochondrial dysfunction. So I just want you to understand that there are decent to strong associations between gastrointestinal issues and body system issues. Now, this should change the way you look at the human body. When you see, let's go skin. That's probably one of the more defensible ones. When you see skin issues, you don't just think what's on top of the body. You should think inside the body, particularly at the level of gut and how it's influencing it. So I just want this to influence how you're looking at the body first. When you see a condition, you need to think about the body systems that are related to that condition. You should be skeptical, like, oh, there's more to this than meets the eye. All right. 80% of the antibody-producing plasma cells in the gut associated lymphoid tissue, it's called GALT, represents most of the immune system. What does this mean? I'm trying to show you there's this thing called GALT, and this represents a part of the immune system, and a predominant part of it is related to the gut and the immune system. So the gut and the immune system, very interconnected. And within this GALT guy, this is a stained sheet of like cells that they've taken from an appendix. And I just wanted to show you a cool scientific image. You don't really have to understand it. But there's a lot of immune cells in here. There's a lot of B cells in here, which is a type of immune cell that helps protect. And that LP guy, lamina propria, that guy helps protect from outside pathogens. So important to know, when the gut breaks down, the immune system can become compromised as well. And we can see things like joint pain, asthma, food allergies, loose stools. Each symptom here has a different level. Don't just run and say eczema is caused by gut issues. That's not a good scientist. But there are associations, and each condition and symptom has a certain link to it. So cool. So the immune system and the gut are quite linked. Okay, well, detoxification is as well, and that's governed predominantly via the liver. And approximately 30% of detoxification happens via the gut. IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, going to be one of the most common conditions that you see. 5 to 15% of the world's population are suspected to have it. It is a conglomerate of symptoms. I love that word, conglomerate of symptoms. We're going to get into it when we talk about that in the next presentation about SIBO. We'll go deeper into it, but I just want to familiarize you with the more common term, because that's how they define it in research. The thing is, with IBS, most of research is actually done on IBS and IBD, not necessarily SIBO, because SIBO is still kind of like is this a condition type of thing in research? And your doctor won't necessarily say you've been diagnosed with SIBO because it's not within the modern medicine teachings as prevalently as IBS. So what's being researched and what's being used in functional kind of health are two different things here. So we have to look at what's being researched and then extrapolate out. 39% of IBS patients have anxiety symptoms. 28% of them had depressive symptoms. And this chicken and egg, they both influence each other to an extent, but I just want to show you some associations that exist between mental health and IBS and anxiety. And mechanisms that explain this are varied and slightly complex, but one of them is at the level of neurotransmitters, which I'll explain in a second. Also, women are 2 to 2.5 times more likely to seek help for IBS symptoms. This is something I noticed. I don't know if you guys noticed this. Females tend to seek, I'm seeing some head nods. Females tend to seek out more help for their health. And I looked at my boy Charlie. I'm like, oh, Charlie mainly just works with women. Like, I don't know if Charlie manufactured why he picked gut health out of everything. Actually, I know, because he has a personal story there. It's not just some ploy to make money. But it's also, he's chosen not to work with predominantly men or market himself towards predominantly men. And that's quite intriguing to me because it's quite clever, even if it's inadvertent, because women are way more likely to seek out coaching and support. So if you're trying to communicate to men, it actually can be a little bit more difficult statistically because they're less likely to seek out for help. So you might need more belief shifting. But women have worse symptoms.
I was speaking to Charlie yesterday for the podcast, and he was saying that the men that he works with now in the Gut Health Hub, they can often have worse stool reports, but their symptoms don't seem to be as great, whereas women can have greater symptoms and still obviously poor stool reports. But I put it down to maybe, I guess we're a lot more sensitive to our body's signals, whereas men can be more in their head more often than not to generalize both.
Going to neurotransmitters now. Important for you guys to understand, know that most of the serotonin is produced by gut cells, not directly by the brain. And we have a little study here. Brain actually contains very little serotonin. Most of the body's serotonin resides in the gut, in these enterochromaffin cells. Now, serotonin is not just about mood. It's about regulating appetite. It's about regulating sleep-wake cycles, impulse control. Now, look at this guy. The state of the world and your clients. Is this world bloated? You have two, yes, because he does. Because he's that bloated. He's developed a second belly button. These are the symptoms you guys need to watch out for. We're going to cover this more in detail, but I just need to introduce you to it. This is a symptom constellation, that I would like you guys, let me try and zoom in for you. Okay. Zooming in's not working. There we go. Okay. Let's go to the top here. So we see a the memes are killing me. We see a psychiatric overlap here between anxiety, depression, as I've spoken about. In the bottom here, there's different type of diagnostic criteria for IBS. We have a constipation prevalency, we have a diarrhea prevalency, and we have a mixed version as well. On the left are the symptoms I would like you guys to pay attention to. The bloating and distension, the loose stools or the constipation, visceral hypersensitivity, so like pain. Probably I just draw attention to the word somatization. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that. It's when emotional stress can exhibit itself in physical symptoms. So you might get gut pain after emotional distressful experiences. Outside of that, our correlated conditions that overlap with IBS that have some link to it include fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, pain, GERD. GERD also, by the way, you can just think of like reflux disorders or diseases, or that symptom in particular when you get a lot of reflux and acid coming up. How many clients of ours are afflicted by the most common gut issue in the world? Like, how much should we really care about this? A lot. Now, you won't find this diagram in the literature because I have adapted it and created based off the literature. I think I've done a pretty good job. I've really tried to agonize over the research. I'm not going to be perfect in my interpretation of it, but it's generally going to be very directionally accurate, and I do my best. So, long story short, in the green, they have new tighter criteria for identifying IBS. The reason why you might see prevalence rates goes down is because the restriction, a criteria for what actually is diagnosed as IBS now is tighter. You need more frequent symptoms. You need like more distress, more severity. So that's in the blue. That's why that's higher, because they're capturing a wider net. In Australia here, depending on the criteria they use, it's going to be between about 3.5% to 13%. So that's quite a lot. And these are only people. This is only people captured within this criteria, which has limitations to it and doesn't capture people who have some of the symptoms but haven't been technically diagnosed with IBS. So this now should get you to start to think, I need to be asking my clients questions about their gut. It's related to the immune system. It's related to obviously all the ones I listed before, psychological symptoms, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Just reminding you guys, we're talking about a colonization of bacteria that's translocated from the large intestine to the small intestine, which should be mostly sterile. This is usually going to be the main thing that you see in your clients with gut issues. I used to have it. About 33% of patients with GI complaints who underwent a breath test had it. There are limitations to that testing, but we're just generally speaking now. It is significantly associated with bloating, abdominal pain, smoking, and anemia. In another study, tests for SIBO were positive in 43% of patients with bloating and distension. So what does this mean? When you see what could this mean? When you see bloating and distension, that heaviness, the guy of the big bloated world that I just showed you, client kind of looks like that, or you look like that. We can see in almost half the cases of those people with bloating and distension consistently, it's usually going to be at least 3 months, at least a few times a week, roughly. The likelihood of having SIBO is quite high. And this bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine can be quite problematic and usually doesn't go away on its own. Now, of those people, 73% of those with functional constipation and 69% had diarrhea. So you can see those issues you can look out for, those symptoms you can look out for. So now I have a question for you guys again. What do you think is driving so many of these gut issues? What are the predictors potentially if you haven't skipped forward and cheated? If you have, just put a 1 in the chat and just say I cheated. Otherwise, of course you, Paul. Okay, Paul. That's very true, Fez. A BRB is not an answer, Leon. Why do we think this is happening, guys? Leon, the irony is if you actually have to go to the bathroom, like that's because I know some of you use the bathroom, that would be quite funny. Let us know what your Bristol stool chart is. However, Zoe mentioned girl bossing. That's actually related to a key system here, the stress system. What else? What do you guys think is driving so many of these issues? You need to be able to think. Yep. Yes. Ultra processed food. That is absolutely accurate. Good, Georgia. Yep. Hormones. Constipation. Sarah, what do you think? Oh, perfect. Low stomach acid. Usually more of a symptom. Blue light. I haven't seen it in the research, but circadian rhythm does have influence to it. Cool. All right. Good guesses. Let's look at what the research says so you can know what to look out for. Now, these are functional gut issues. We're talking about IBS, dysbiosis, so bacterial overgrowth, bloating. Number 1, gastroenteritis, post-infectious IBS. This is the single, Paul, what were your guesses? This was the single strongest trigger for a new onset of IBS. So we're talking about an intestinal infection. This is a bit small, isn't it? I know. Let me see what I can do. I can zoom in. Matan has wanted me to zoom in for years. He hasn't actually seen a single presentation because nothing's been zoomed in. You'll have to do Trinity again. Okay. Hopefully that's a bit better. So someone is exposed to, let's say, food poisoning. That's what happening to Beck right now. Campylobacter, Salmonella, Shigella. The probability of post-infectious IBS is 11 to 12% per episode. So someone gets food poisoning. They have a likelihood of approximately 11 to 12% per episode of food poisoning to then get IBS, which is then connected to SIBO, which can take quite a while to address. So food poisoning, water contamination, which can also happen from fecal transmission, when you have your dogs, sleeping with your dogs, and you have because they're not too clean, when you have shoes coming in the house, which also transmit fecal and bacterial particles. So there can be a lot of modes of transmission. It's usually from food or water that are contaminated, particularly when you travel. I think it's a bit, if you don't mind me saying, retarded that a lot of people love Bali, and Bali has a name for Bali bellies. You're going to a place where you can literally, the likelihood of you getting this is high. So you get to sit on a beach and sip a pina colada for $7, but you have to spend the next 2 years fixing your gut. Not the best trade-off. Sorry. I've actually been 5 times, but I'm done with it. Anyway, you should know this should be something to look out for. The next one is psychological stress and prior anxiety and depression. So just be careful when you go to these countries. Obviously we go to them with our retreats. Just be careful, okay? There's something called a Mendelian randomization trial, super nerd stuff right here. They're just looking at genetics. They're analyzing it's a really high quality study. They're looking at the genetics of participants in relation to observations that they're making. So you can observe more causal evidence. So things are more linked very strongly, not just observational data. So stress, we are very confident, alters gut motility. So the movement, how fast something moves or slow something moves. Permeability, so think like a screen door, something opens and closes, is things passing through more than it should via the HPA axis. And vagal pathways. Vagal thinking regulating the parasympathetic nervous system. Anxiety and depression often precede, they come before IBS onset by months to years. So addressing the nervous system is really, really, really important. Yes, Zoe, I will. And I'm sorry to hear about that with your cousin. Sounds like they need this presentation. I actually need to share an anecdote. This is important. This is going to take time, but I'm going to do it. Hey, I was consulting with a client who wanted to do some coaching with me. She had seen 2 pretty great professionals. Actually, one of them is in Zion. I can't mention names out of respect. 2 good professionals this person saw for her SIBO. Didn't work. But for a little bit, then it came back. So I'm asking her why. What did they do? Okay, one just did kind of the foundations, wasn't that specific. With gut, okay, improved diet, improved nutrition. Here are some general supplements. Not that great, but okay. The other one, strong, experienced, educated female health practitioner, been in the game a long time, did a multi-phase protocol with this client. The works. Supplements, bloods, elemental diet, antimicrobial phase, even went on antibiotics alongside this. Cool. To eradicate the issue, the SIBO. So she's on the call with me. Why is she on the call with me? She's still got problems. So I asked her, did they do anything else with you? And what do you think I'm alluding to here is the missing system of why this woman was on a call with me and seen 2 practitioners pay thousands of dollars, but actually still had this problem with their gut. That's what I want. That's the answer. That's what I believe the answer to be. A key body system that wasn't actually protected and nurtured and supported was her. People often treat clients as like rodents in a study. Well, this supplement's said to work because of this study, so I'm going to give you this, and this program is said to work because this program has worked for you. There's the key thing that I observed that neither of these practitioners did was stress nervous system. When I asked her about this, which the other practitioners didn't, she told me that she is, let me actually just tell you exactly what she told me. Got it right here. She gets gas, irregular periods, and skin issues. She doesn't have a period, but it came back when she worked with this practitioner, then it went away again. She has this constant sense of urgency that she feels. She constantly feels like she's rushing. She feels like she's putting a lot of pressure on herself. And she wants to engage with more, reconnect with more fun and alleviate the pressure from herself and not feel so stressed. So this stress thing sounds a bit woo sometimes, but it actually has strong mechanisms to driving these health issues. And I believe she's back here again is because the other practitioners didn't cover a key body system, the HPA axis, the stress system, her nervous system. And that's why the protocol can be amazing. The guide, the science, and the nutrition can be amazing. But unless you get to the root cause of it, or the key body systems that are driving the underlying issue, then you might just be another step in your client seeing like their third or fifth practitioner. So I would rather you guys be the last one that a client has to see. So I wanted to let you guys know that you could be super smart and be super dumb. No disrespect. I think you could be so smart that you can be dumb. I think some practitioners are so smart that they've completely missed the human. Yes, Zoe.
In regards to clients who they maybe can't see that their stress is a big driver,
Yeah.
e.g., when I was reading the module yesterday, like that sort of a thing, and seeing that stress or being in a constant state of like rush is keeping someone stuck in a cycle of their symptoms and dysfunction.
Yeah.
But they don't see it as a problem because they're like, well, I've been in this job for years. Like I have woken up to get to the gym at 4 a.m. for years. Like I've had this. And you're like, how do you, or what sort of questions, if Socratic or dialogue, could you use to let a client know it's probably like the stress when they actually identify with that not being a problem?
It's a really good question. It's going to be a combination of education. Like we need to educate our clients because they don't know the impacts of emotional and physical stress on their health symptoms. And the other part is identity, because identity and beliefs. People form an identity around a certain personality that is related to stress. It helps them produce, it helps them be productive, it helps them perform. And part of the reason they're successful or validated or have a positive self-esteem in life is because of the very thing that's slowly harming and killing them. So you need to consider that, and that it might take some time to belief shift that. So one, when there's an education piece, I would like to explain to you the damages that this is having on your body. Do you see this? Do you realize this? Number two is going to be, I would do some Socratic questioning, guys, and I would ask my client, look, so I want to get the landscape. How do you feel in your day-to-day? And if you ask the stress question, a lot of people are dismissive. Try and go a bit more specific. What does it feel like in your body? Do you tend to feel pressure? Do you tend to feel anxiety? Are you rushing, or do you move pretty slowly? Do you feel more connected to your femininity or masculinity? For the men, it's a lot of pressure in their chest. I would try and be specific in your questions, because you want that as kind of like ammunition to be like, well, you said all of these things, but you said you weren't stressed. Actually, you are actually describing a dysregulated, stressed person. Did you realize that? So we need to be mindful of our language and giving them a language to their own experience of life, because people will dismiss stress or accept it as normal when it's connected to the identity of performance and money and success. And then at the end of that conversation, if someone's really like hard-headed and time again, I would just have a very frank comment, and I'll say, look, I could write you the perfect plan. I could write you the perfect functional guide. I could consult with the best practitioners in the world. I'll go like big example. But the likelihood of addressing these issues and having you feel at your best, or whatever their goal is going to be lower or unlikely if we don't address this part, which is the stress, which is this system that has been ignored for years. You've told me you've been doing this for years, yet here you are. So I need to then manage expectations that without addressing this, my ability to support and help you is going to be limited. Are you okay with that? So I would focus on those three things.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful dialogue.
I hope so. When you have that when you guys have those convos, record it, send it, let's look at it. Yeah, Fez, you need to slow down. I understand your nervous system body's adapt. I've talked to this to you about, I'm just going to tell you right now, Fez, please slow down a bit. I get it. Same's with me. Do your best to slow down. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Okay, you got this. That's I imagine like Leon, you probably resonate with that. All right, okay. That's dialogue. Go back here. Back to the screen. All right, so psychological stress. That's just a story I wanted to tell you guys to hammer home the point. You can be amazing, smart practitioner, but be really kind of dumb with the human. Antibiotic exposure, even short courses disrupt microbiome exposure for months, if not years. I have one client, Billy, the guy's had like 8 courses of antibiotics, got some gut issues. And it comes up in his immune system when he does his endurance races. That is an immune system challenge. Contributes to the development of SIBO. So you want to screen for lifetime exposure of antibiotics. Can we put how many times you've been on antibiotics in the chat personally? For me, I've had once to my recollection for my SIBO. Wow, Zoe.
Had access to them, which was the thing. So I didn't have to get prescribed them.
Oh,
And
wow.
I didn't realize how bad they were at the time. But I kept getting tonsillitis.
Okay, Matan 5+. What about you, Paul? Really? Countless. What for?
The latest one I actually had bronchitis, and then I've also had pneumonia. I had a bit of chronic fatigue growing up. I can't remember if it was for that, but lots of things, infections, flu-like symptoms. Yeah, I just remember always copping it growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's gnarly. Okay, so you guys obviously see the prevalence is even quite high in a group of health professionals, let alone the general population. Please don't get me mistaken. Antibiotics save lives. Do not go out there and recommend your clients don't take antibiotics. You don't want to be liable for something like that. They need to consult with their physician on that. Your responsibility is to educate, is to present information so they can make an informed decision. It's not to be biased towards one particular agenda. It's to present information in a objective, unbiased manner as possible. Next, females. They are more likely to have IBS-related symptoms. We know estrogen and progesterone affect motility, pain, bile flow, particularly if it's high. That's something to screen for. Then, as Zoe said, or some of you said, Georgia, ultra-processed food diet. There's a number of factors that influence this, but improving diet quality will be a risk factor. I want to make a special mention to high-intensity, long-duration exercise. Endurance events, we're talking 1, 2, 3 hours. Lockie Kennett is somebody who's experienced this himself, can increase transiently, temporarily, permeability. So these tight junction proteins in the gut, they kind of open up for too long, too much. Things pass through, trigger immune responses. Okay. And you see this endotoxin movement throughout, which is, you can think of like there's negative gram bacteria in these cells that can break open and be transported and then have a bunch of inflammatory molecules and cytokines inside that can trigger immune responses. So these are the things to watch out for, okay? These are risk factors that you want to look out for as a professional before you jump the gun with anything. In regards to another condition, inflammatory bowel disease, this is the other side. Yes, for triathletes, that would be a potential population group first. For inflammatory bowel disease, we're talking about Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis sitting underneath that. This is immune mediated and related more so, and it has quite strong genetic influences. So we know she has been diagnosed with that previously. It's a single strongest measure for IBD. And what 0.78 means is they studied twins and they found that this is the amount of the reason that is explained from genetics. So 78% of genetics seems to explain IBD for Crohn's in this particular study. So there's just high risk for genetics. It's high risk for Crohn's, for ulcerative colitis. For these, Leon Dante has ulcerative colitis. Right, just to give you something to relate to. Smoking is the strongest modifiable risk factor. Gastroenteritis, our infection, gut infection. We've talked about this. A 15-year Danish cohort study showed Salmonella and Campylobacter infection raised IBD risk 1.9 to 2.9 fold. Now, there are things you can do to minimize the risk of infection, developing obviously a strong immune system, addressing your nutrient deficiencies, getting enough sleep. So you need to think underneath, how can I make myself and my clients more robust against these conditions? Antibiotic exposure, a Danish cohort of 6.1 million people showed antibiotic use raised IBD risk by 28 to 48%. The heavier users had the higher risk group. And then we have ultra-processed diet again. Okay, so what are some things you're noticing? Antibiotics, infection, AKA food poisoning-ish, genetics, stress, anxiety, playing key factors. When you are educating your clients on stress and the gut, just to explain to you guys what is actually happening, we're going to briefly talk about it. I'm going to show you a tight junction protein. So you have these cells in your gut, the intestinal epithelial. In between these, like little hinges. between your cells, between the gut wall lining. They're supposed to open and close. It's normal. Eat food, eat gluten, opens, then it closes. Stays open too long because of a compromised gut, because of some inflammatory condition, for whatever reason. These little like screen doors, they stay open for too long. Someone didn't shut the gate, and then we can get a lot of we can get a lot of food particles. You can have like mast cell degranulation, where the mast cells open up, histamine, cytokines, things like that, go into the bloodstream, and they trigger an immune-related response. So this is an even more nerdier diagram. Claudin, occludin, claudin, zonulin. These are just, you don't need to memorize these. These are tight junction proteins that open and close. It's good to know to understand a bit more about physiology. That's what I'm talking about here. Stress loosens is a loose word. It contributes to the somewhat malfunctioning of these little gates. They did a study on people, healthy volunteers stressed by public speaking, or they did a ice bath, and they saw that certain hormones triggered these immune mediated related responses, and they saw a transient, which means temporary, paracellular leak on the level of the gut. Basically, things are being transported, substances are being transported across the gut tissue into the bloodstream more readily, potentially contributing to more symptoms. So I want you to just know that stress is playing a role at the level of the gut. When you feel stressed, when your clients feel stressed, and the accumulative burden of that over months and years has a meaningful factor. And if it's not addressed, then it doesn't matter how expensive or beautiful or nerdy or justified your amazing gut protocol is, because this is still going on in the background. And here's what it looks like. On the left, we're just describing like a healthy gut-brain axis. And on the right, if you see the arrows here, remember our mast cells have histamine inside, and when they degranulate and they break open and they open up, all of these kind of things come out, like cytokines and tryptase and histamine, just things that trigger immune-related responses, okay? And so we just see with chronic and acute stress, particularly chronic, that you get more pain, you get more bacterial translocation. So this is where, that's a part of what happens with SIBO, is bacteria is migrating up from the large to the small intestine. It ain't supposed to be there, not really, but it's moving up. What's contributing to that? Stress. What should you focus on quite a bit as a coach? Stress. Leon asked, is there a relation to the longer someone is stressed and how long it will take to fix the gut issue? I think it would be irresponsible of me to say completely yes. In my observation, the longer someone has experienced a health-related symptoms like stress and gut symptoms, if they've experienced it for many, many years, generally I notice we need more of a runway. And you could, from what I've seen, perhaps there's research, I haven't seen it. So you want to communicate, Leon, to your clients that, hey, how long have you been feeling like this? So I've been feeling like this for 5 years. It's probably going to take some time to address this and help you with this. Because the client yesterday asked me how long she thinks it'll take to address this. I said about 9 to 12 months. So,
Hey, Saad.
Yeah.
When I've spoken to people about stress in the past, because you said it's pretty much normalized because it's like related to performance,
Yeah.
do you have certain questions or markers that you check so it's a bit more objective, not them just being like, no, I'm not stressed, or yeah, I'm stressed, but they don't give, it's like a hard thing to measure. So I just wonder if there's certain questions that you ask to get feedback for it to make the call if they are actually stressed. I do it. I know that I'm likely more stressed than what I would admit.
2 things. Great question. 1, capture in your biofeedback form. So you should be having that from Zion. So non-invasive questions where you're not like directly asking them to their face so they can be more honest. 2, measure it in the tracker and label it different. So you can ask the client, how do you feel in your body day to day? All these different types of questions. There's not going to be one that's going to be like the thing, but you have to just ask it in different ways. So I'll ask you, Paul, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much. Well, I could ask you, what does stress feel like in your body? Do you feel anxiety? How often do you feel anxiety? I would try and go around it. Like I notice a lot of men feel like the tightness in their chest, the pressure. Do you feel like you're rushing? Like all of those are symptoms related to stress. So I would try and find another label that speaks to them, that describes the sensation that they feel. You just want to try and get them to describe an accurate sensation of their felt body experience. What does it feel like to be in their body? Everybody's different. One of my clients calls it redlining. I would have never thought to call it that, but he calls it that. So I understand it. Doesn't feel like stress, it feels like redlining. True. Is there anything unanswered from that? Cool.
No, I think it's gonna. This has prompted me to probably come up with a few different ways to ask it. Like asking where you feel it in your body is a good example. Questions that sort of dance around it is helpful to, instead of just asking, are you stressed? Yeah, just extract it another way. It's like bypassing their logical mind and
Yes.
getting them to tell you. Yeah, and then the other thing is like, where do you make the call to say this is acute stress compared to chronic stress? Is there an obvious measurement that you take for that, or again, is that come down to like the call you make?
No, well, I mean, probably research defines it somewhat technically. From acute, you guys can think days, weeks, months. Chronic, you can think months, quarters, years.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Glad you guys are keen in stress. Georgia, do you mind sharing what you just wrote? I quite like that.
Yeah, I just learnt this recently in one of my courses. It's to do with nervous system. So it's like essentially it's called felt sense. So it's bringing awareness to the physical response of our body, not just thinking it or not just, trying to mentally process it. It's actually understanding how your body responds to things. And it can be applied to a lot of different things. So stress is one of them, where you're actually noticing where the stress is physically in your body. And it's an awareness piece. So it's something that you'll develop with clients, because most clients will be very reluctant or they'll be unsure of how it feels. So it's asking those questions to develop that felt sense of how they feel in their body.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Really well said. I
Thank
think you're a great person to be able to help clients do that.
Thank you.
In fact, guys, ask someone like Georgia as well, and Danielle and the girls in here. Great contribution. You might have to get into their body, guys, first. Do some breath to start your call. They can actually be able to accurately describe to you what they're feeling in their body instead of their head. All right. 42% of, going back to our vitamins and minerals, 42% of IBD patients were vitamin D deficient, and low vitamin D predicted higher relapse rate. Not to say vitamin D deficiency causes it. We're not saying that. We're saying there's an association. That's something you may want to look at. We know vitamin D plays a key role in the immune system. Proton pump inhibitors or antacids, they put a lot of this on the Matrix media. Take antacids to help your acid reflux. And really, it's also contributing to the propagation and worsening of those symptoms long term, generally speaking. 19 study meta-analysis found chronic proton pump inhibitor use raises SIBO odds by 71%. We are changing the acid base of the stomach itself. We're making the stomach acid less acidic to create temporary relief for the client, for the patient. However, or the doctor is, whoever's prescribing it, the pharmacist. However, long term, we're technically also kind of creating a hypochlorhydria, low stomach acid condition, which makes digesting and assimilating nutrients, particularly protein, harder, because we need an acidic state with an appropriate pH to do that. Really, Paul? You just repeat that out loud?
I think you mean me, the PPIs.
You're not Paul.
No.
You're Georgia.
Look like
Sorry,
Paul.
G.
Yeah, because I've had a lot of reflux and GERD issues for a long time, and obviously relates to all my issues. So they gave me antacids, and I was on it for so long. I was on it for a really, really long time. Didn't found it actually did much, so I used to have to take almost triple doses just to get it to do something. And my mum's the same. My mum's been on antacids for a long time, and she's a little bit more challenging to come off them. But yeah, they don't do much. They almost make it worse.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. It's good for you to see that now, be a case study for it. This just explains the mechanism of how it works. I don't need to read it out. You guys can, if you're curious, you can see how it can increase the risk of stomach infections like H. pylori by increasing the survivability. Stomach acid is antimicrobial. Generally the more acidic it is in a pH when you're digesting of like 1.5 to like 2-ish, it's very antimicrobial. And so why do some people get food poisoning and other people don't? Well, one contributor, we think, maybe because of stomach acid pH. And let's say Beck, who's recovering from food poisoning right now, Well, it would not be surprising given the history of her health if she had gut-related issues, SIBO, H. pylori exposure, which is the most common stomach infection in the world. She may have had a history of PPIs as well. And so why some person may respond poorly to an immune-related insult, eat the same food, one person gets sick in the same food, the other person doesn't. It's happened to me and Danielle a couple of times. The state of my gut, my stomach is likely to be in a better state. Perhaps, potentially, my stomach acid is a little bit more acidic towards what it functionally should be versus another person who may get food poisoning. I just want to give a shout out to AI. AI image generation is getting sick. Like, this is not bad. This is really actually quite accurate, decently. Functional anatomy and physiology of the gut. We've covered some of the foundations and the importance and the prevalence. Let's talk about the digestive organs. So I don't need to go into hyper detail. There's just some basic foundations that you guys need to understand. The digestive process doesn't actually technically begin here. This is like the second step, but I'll explain it in a second. So this is a top, kind of a big zoomed out view of where we are in the digestive process. All of these are involved in it. So we have our main organs. We have our accessory organs, the liver, the gallbladder in the green, the pancreas in the yellow. So I just want you to have awareness. You should know, as a health professional and coach, these organs and their function. GIT means gastrointestinal tract, by the way. So what does the gallbladder secrete? And where was that thing stored? That's a question for you guys. If you can answer in the chat. Yeah, bile. Great. And where is the bile stored? Cool. Great. Correct. Bile does what? Yeah. Emulsifies micelles of fat. It is also has an antimicrobial effect as well, just like stomach acid. So the pancreas will regulate hormones like insulin, as an example, and we will see enzymes being produced from this network, enzymes and bile being produced from this network into the small intestine to help break down food and digest it. Yeah. There is also a neural component to the digestive system. This is known as the enteric nervous system. So we have our, just to see the branches, central, peripheral. When we go down these systems, at the ends of them, you see on the left, the sympathetic, and on the right, the parasympathetic. You guys are very familiar with this, but there is this connected system that is interrelated between the both. And that is called the enteric nervous system, the ENS. Most of you may have not have heard of it, and it will regulate movement, electrical signals, gastric acid secretions, blood flow, hormones, neurotransmitters. It connects these systems together and plays a role in connecting the brain to the gut. You can think of this like your gut's nervous system. I want you to be familiar with the term. Now, this is not an AI image. This is a real image, actually. It has millions of neurons which communicate to these branches of the nervous system. And I believe we're looking at the vagus nerve or the vagal nerve and part of the intestine. So there's 100 million plus neurons here. It's a very highly branched, interconnected network. Information from the gut travels to the brain. You should know that. Don't have to fully understand this image. It's a little bit detailed, just to let you know where we are in space. Little villi guys, they help absorb nutrients. We're at the level of the gut. We're just looking at the tissue of the gut that play a role in absorption. We're looking at we'll like cut it open and we're looking inside of it. You can see mucosa, which play a protective role. It's like a little film, mucosal layer. And in the red and blue lines, some of these sense things, some of these send signals to and from the brain. And I just wanted to show you the network of what it kind of looks like and how it's connected at the level of the gut. We have all these motor neurons that communicate to and from our brain. If a food contains a high amount of bacterial toxins, let's say from like Campylobacter or Salmonella, something like a food poisoning, and it reaches the intestine, the normal response is actually diarrhea. The normal response is to vomit. This is a good thing because your body's protecting itself from a potential toxin to remove it from the body. The problem is when the body overreacts or doesn't have appropriate defenses or as much defenses to respond with a bit more robustness, meaning why does one person just get a bit of a tummy ache and the other person's like out for 3 days? Bit of an exaggerated example, but the stronger your immune system generally, the more robustly you can respond to things like this. Beautiful. Keep putting stats like that in the chat. That's great. Love that. Fire. Motility means movement. It's a term you should be familiar with. Peristalsis is the contractions across the gut. Moves things along. Being in a parasympathetic calm state helps that. Now, why we generally don't recommend snacking is because of this mechanism in the gut called the migrating motor complex. Think of this like a street sweeper in the gut. It is like these electrical waves that move contents through the gut while you're fasting and not eating. Constantly eating, then you're giving your gut a lot of opportunity for fermentation, for bacterial translocation, for the gut not to be in a state of general repair. There's certain energetic processes that happen at the level of the mitochondria that are important to happen when there is not food coming in. If you're consistently being in a fed state, whether it's a bodybuilder trying to get jacked, whether it's an athlete who's doing a long endurance event, this repeated exposure can compromise some gut activities. And so one staple habit I generally educate clients on is snacking. How often are you snacking? Can we minimize it? Can we just have consistent meals to keep you satiated, to have better metabolic responses, and to improve the gut? We have these cool guys called villi and microvilli. These are like finger-like projections. And on top of the villi, there's even like tinier villi. It's called micro. These increase the surface area of the gut so we can have greater nutrient absorption, which is really cool. They also release enzymes that help break down certain food components, which you can see here. Anything, almost any word ending in ase, A-S-E, can be ascribed to be an enzyme. Malase, lactase, carboxypeptase, aminopeptidase. Notice how there's an ase at the end? Usually that means it's an enzyme. Enzymes speed up chemical reactions. Enzymes help speed up chemical reactions to make an action happen, like digesting, for example. When someone has something like Crohn's disease or an IBD related condition or celiac disease, we see observable damage and blunting of the villi. And I don't have evidence for this, but I suspect potentially this is why people like Georgia have higher caloric intake needs, potentially. Even though we're talking about nutrient absorption, I wonder how much the potential damage to those structures in your gut, Georgia, or someone like you, is requiring a greater need for energy because there is less of it being absorbed. I wonder. That's a funny way to look at it. The tight junctions of the armpits of the microvilli. And here we have an image of where we are in space, because I know it can be a little bit tricky to be like, what the fuck's a microvilli? Where are we in this world? Like, I'm just a monkey floating on a planet hurling through space who's only going to live 85 years. What's going on? I get it. Existential shit. However, we're right here. We're in the small intestine, in these little folds inside of it. Inside those little folds to make our villi, and inside those villi, we zoom in a little bit more, and there's these microvilli. And inside those microvilli, there's more shit we're not going to get into. What does that mean, Magic School Bus? Oh, to go really small inside the body? Is that what that means?
You know, it was a show. I'm sending a photo. It was a show and a book, a magic school bus. But what they'd do is like they'd pick up the kids for school and then they'd go, like the bus would shrink.
Oh, I've seen this.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is a throwback. Wow. Oh my God. I feel like a kid again. Yeah, it proper unlocked a memory. Inner boy activated. That was a good show. Someone send a YouTube clip of, actually don't send a YouTube clip. You're going to get distracted. Do it after. No one open YouTube. Otherwise it's all over. I'll lose you for the entire call. Okay. Back to the we're going to go all in well, the next retreat is actually a magic bus inside the body. Plot twist. This is just, I don't need to read out every single word. This is just describing how the gut immune connection and the structures that are related to it. We have different immune cells in here and explaining why gut health and the immune system go hand in hand. So the immune system is built to like recognize a foreign pathogen, respond to it appropriately. What can happen is your immune system can begin to misappropriate what a foreign pathogen is, and it can overreact. It can underreact. If a child is not exposed to a wide variety of foods, for example, growing up, you can develop a low oral tolerance or immune tolerance for certain foods, and you can respond more to a wide variety of foods. So it's you can look up immune system in Zion and you'll be able to read more about it. But how do we get here where some people respond and some people don't? We have genetic predispositions, which I talk about in the new complex health conditions module. We have a trigger exposure. So let's actually, I'll stay on gut. I was going to talk about mold. Susceptible genes might be related to IBD or Crohn's. Then you have a trigger exposure. It could be antibiotics. It could be big stress events. It could be traveling somewhere and then getting a bacterial infection. It could be a combination of those things. It could be mycotoxins like mold as well. Then we have an underlying gut damage, which is accelerating or making it easier for the problem to become more prevalent. Let's say maybe somebody already has IBD, like that's, or Crohn's disease, and that's like another thing on top. And then with that, this combination, this recipe, we can very quickly see how gut issues are so prevalent. So I just wanted to show you the relationship between different networks here and the complexity of it and why you need to learn about physiology and anatomy and nutrition and all of this. You'll see in the complex health conditions how the HLA gene is linked to people not being able to metabolize biotoxins like mold, and how we see like 15 to like maybe 50% of people have certain HLA gene genotypes, which means why can some people walk in our retreat building on our retreat, respond poorly to potentially mold and mycotoxins, and why some people have no reaction? Well, we think partly this reason is to do with their underlying genetics, which predispose them to break down biotoxins effectively or not, which is really, really cool to know. Yes, I suspect so as well, Fez. I suspect so as well for you, Georgia, as well. The gut lining has 4 functions. Let's go on the left here first. Absorb nutrients, protection, send information, and connect and communicate to the nervous system. Absorbing nutrients is going to be one of the most relevant things that you guys will see. We just talk about where the cells it does that at, and then what they do. So you can see enterocytes absorb nutrients, lacteals. When I hear the word lact, I always think of fat, so that helps me remember that. Like lactose is often found, I just try and connect it. It's found in milk. It's a milk protein. I think of milk, I think of fat. Lacteals help absorb fat. It's just how I connect it in my brain. Maybe it's helpful for you. We see these immune cells. Like you might hear people describe when you listen to a podcast, goblet cells, panther cells, like what do they do? And then, so first we understand the function, the physiology of the gut. Then we can understand deeper of like what nutrients support that, what behaviors, what habits, what lifestyle things support or undermine these processes. So once you understand this, you can understand how something like a panther cell, which is really antimicrobial, really great for the human body to have enough of these and them functioning well. What do you need for that? Well, you need vitamin A. You need zinc, you need vitamin D. Autoimmune conditions undermine the production of these. But first you should know what they are and what they do. Don't need you to memorize it right now, just be aware of it. And here is a beautiful diagram that was drawn by the one and only, of course, the best drawer in the world. So this is just describing where some of those, let me open this up for you. This is just describing, those things on your screen that we just described, like enterocytes, villi, goblet cells, which are immune cells, panther cells. We're just pointing to the different direction of like kind of where they are, generally speaking. So you have this wall, this tight junction, you have this like gut tissue wall at the top here with the little finger-like projections. You have these little gray things are tight junctions. They're like the gates, remember, that open and close. And there's different types of ones as well. And then underneath that, you have what she's drawn here is the lamina propria, and that provides support. That is like one step closer to getting to the bloodstream. This is a very important part of your immune system. And you can see that because you see white blood cells, eosinophils, B cells, T cells. When you see this, these are different types of immune cells that play a role in defending and protecting from pathogens. You see mast cells. If we have too much of those being produced and degranulating, they produce a lot of cytokines and histamine, which you can then get histamine reactions. So the histamine reaction can be proliferated at the level of the gut. Well, it actually often is. And this is kind of where we are and how it can happen. So this is where we are in space. Yeah, I really like that sentence. Tight junctions playing peekaboo with different proteins, let them through. Because it's like a metaphor to help you understand what's going on. I like playful language like that to describe physiology. Good job. If you guys have questions, just please put them in the chat or confusions. Right. A little bit more practical now. We're going to go a little bit out now. So there's these 6 main steps: ingestion, secretion, mixing and propulsion, digestion, absorption, and defecation. These are our major 6 steps in the digestive process. I have a question for you. If you haven't skipped ahead like Paul did, where does digestion begin? The eyeballs. I mean, technically the mouth is correct, but there's a missing step that one of you kind of alluded to. Yeah, all right, you guys are getting it. All right, smell, eyes, brain. All right, cool. And that first phase, that is responsible for what some of you are getting correct is called the cephalic phase. The 3 phases of digestion: cephalic, gastric, and intestinal. Anytime I teach on gut, people really remember this, and it changes the way their habits change for them and their clients, usually forever. So the cephalic phase is actually the first phase of digestion. It does not begin in the mouth. Things happen in the mouth, but it begins in the sensory world. It begins with taste, with touch, with smell, with sight, with anticipation even. The anticipation of food, as we saw in Pavlov's dog experiment, the dog would salivate at the sound of a bell and the anticipation of the food to come. You smell food cooking, anticipation. So even thinking, the biggest practical thing for you guys to do here, and like I identified the client who was on the phone to yesterday, she said she rushes when she eats. She's not smelling and slowing down. She saw a masterclass of mine. She's like, oh, I need to do more of that. These sensory inputs are interpreted by your brain. As we saw with the neural connection, these motor neurons communicate down the body to the level of the gut, and they stimulate things like CCKs, cholecystokinin. This stimulates the production of bile. We see gastrin, which is an enzyme. So this is just some examples, and they're all starting to work. Yes, smelling releases enzymes. Smelling triggers the neuronal pathways to trigger the target organs to produce those enzymes. So slow down, guys, when you eat. For you and your clients, if you want a $0 strategy to improve your client's gut and health and nutrient absorption for the rest of their life. If you ever see Jai and Jimena smelling their food in an Instagram story, I don't want to take credit, but I'm going to. That's partly because of what I taught them, and now they do it all the time. Lockie does it as well. It's kind of like a little legacy of mine. So the practical thing for yourself and all of your clients, guys, is to encourage them to smell, slow down, take 3 breaths before each meal. What does saying grace before our meals do for us? It slows us down. We're inadvertently smelling the food, getting more parasympathetic. We're improving our gut motility. We're helping produce these important enzymes. That's interesting. Yeah, mouth breathing contributing to gut issues. Nasal cavities aren't big enough. Yeah, if you're mouth breathing, you're not particularly getting a strong sensory experience. Okay. I really want to hammer home this point. Smelling, slowing down, putting the fork down between bites. Notice how slow I eat. You guys have seen me. I used to get distended, really, really bloated every single meal I ate. These are one of the habits I had to improve to minimize that from happening. First phase, very important. Please do it. Check in with all your clients. When you eat, how long does it take you to eat? Try this because you don't want to be too accusatory. How many bites do you have per mouthful of food? How many bites approximately? Can you count for me? Number 2 is how quickly do you finish your meal? I can tell you half an hour, 45-minute experiences I have, but some clients will tell you 10 minutes. They're rushing, they're eating while working. Very, very important to address this. It's free and it has quite good positive influence. Then we get to the level of the mouth. We have mastication, which is that mechanical, driving of breaking down food into chyme, which is like the mix of enzymes. Oh, that actually happens a bit later down the track in the stomach, where you have all these enzymes and food boluses mixed all together in this mush. I need Leon, you're going to say some shit like that. I'm sure you have something to say to that. Salivary amylase. We have enzymes in our mouth that digest carbohydrates. Lingual lipase. Lingual is a part of the mouth, kind of adjacent to the tongue. And that starts to break down fat. So if you're not chewing your food properly and your client's like, I want to go fix my gut, and you give them $1,000 of supplements and you haven't even brought up chewing. You haven't even brought up slowing down when they eat. You're missing this massive piece. Then we get to the stomach, which most clients only know to be where digestion starts. And we just have finally talked about it now, even though we talked about 2 other systems beforehand. Now, nutrients are not absorbed in the stomach. We don't have villi to absorb, or we don't have absorptive nutrient capacities in really the stomach. We see that the digestive process has a thermic effect of food where we lose or we utilize about 5 to 10% of the energy that we are consuming is utilized in the digestive process, protein being the highest. This is also partly why we create heat and our body temperature increases, particularly when the consumption of protein, because heat is also partly responsible for, it's related to the production of enzymes as well. and you need an appropriate like body temperature or like temperature of the organism to like create enzymes and not break them down. We have all these hormones and they all do different things. Gastrin will play a role at creating like pepsinogen, pepsin, which helps break down proteins, and also like stimulating hydrochloric acid to make sure your stomach is acidic enough. I would probably point to, which one do I want to point out? Okay, I actually want to point out intrinsic factor. That's something I want you guys to remember and take a note of. Now, it's really important for helping absorb B12. Intrinsic factor, which plays a role in the absorption of B12, really mainly happens only under quite stable acidic conditions. So when we look at stomach acidity, you guys can see that. The pH of, oh, this is quite rough. The pH of a digestive stomach, this is not included in the notes, is going to be between like 1.5 to 2 in a healthy like stomach acid doing its thing as it's supposed to be. Intrinsic factor is released under these conditions. It needs to have a pretty tight pH, somewhere between like 1.5 to 3-ish, 3.5-ish. When we have hypochlorhydria, when we have a low stomach acid, what can happen is the pH of the stomach can go higher, because hypochlorhydria means low stomach acid, which could talk about the amounts, but it could also infer that the stomach is not acidic enough. It depends on the person. So the implication of this is if someone has gut issues like low stomach acid related to a whole bunch of things, and their pH is a little bit elevated, let's say it's like 3 to 4, you need, in order for the parietal cells to produce, release, and have a functioning intrinsic factor to absorb B12 effectively, you need the stomach to be acidic enough. With hypochlorhydria and low stomach acid, it goes the other way, which means people with stomach acidic related issues may not be absorbing B12 as effectively because of that, which is potentially why you may see low serum B12 on a blood test. Serum B12 has its limitations, but it is one, and also like you could see affected hematology and like MCV as well, if there is a B12 insufficiency. So it's something you can potentially connect together. And if there's a B12 insufficiency, deficiency, energy production is going to suck. It's going to be hard. You might see symptoms related to B12 deficiency as well. And it could be related to the level of the gut. It could be related to the acidity. Sorry, no, that was a lot. Talk about it more later. Oh, I guess I covered it. Like I said, I just said that. And it's not just B12. We're talking about minerals, calcium, iron, potassium. So these are other minerals that you guys will see in the functional blood work module that can be related to gut issues. These are associations, okay? Often mechanistic, meaning we don't have like that great research on this stuff. We're kind of looking at how the pathways work and taking our best educated guesses. So I like to say your stomach's like a lemon, and that's how you can kind of remember the pH. Lemon is about 2, which is also why some people can find it helpful to take lemon as an early kind of digestive aid before they have their meal. Maybe if you don't respond to ACV very well, for whatever reason, you might try lemon. Thanks for letting me know, Leon. Make sure you watch the replay. Protein digestion. Like I actually said earlier, I should have probably read this slide. I said it already. I gave it away. Pepsin helps digest protein. Before it comes, it's right here, pepsinogen. That's kind of broken apart, a peptide's taken off, turns into pepsin only when it interacts with hydrochloric acid. And that pepsin, in this really cool diagram on the right here, will then interact with your amino acids, your dietary protein, and that's when it'll start to break them apart. Cool. What's a symptom? Oh, let me actually back up. Hypochlorhydria we typically see a pH between 3 to 5. Pepsin is inactive at around 5. Inactive. So I struggle to digest protein. I have an aversion to meat is not an evolutionarily accurate symptom. Humans would not be here if they had an aversion to meat. We likely would not have the brain sizes we have now and the capacity to have intellect as we do now and solve problems like we do now if we didn't interact with fire and start to be able to break down and consume meat. You can read Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari if you want to know more. And so this is a stability curve of that happening. So you can see how peptic activity drops off at a pH after 4 quite precipitously, quite meaningfully. So the biggest takeaway from this is for our plant-based eaters, for our people on like proton pump inhibitors, like antacids, which is going to be common, for people with low stomach acid, people who struggle to digest meat, you want to look at this area. To finish off this section, no ticks included. Common symptoms to look out for your low stomach acid presentation is bloating very quickly after meals. Why could this be? Because the time it takes to get from your mouth to your stomach is quite short. We're talking like it's very largely immediate. And the bloating that comes off, that might be within 30 to 45 minutes. Burping, belching, feeling heavy or quickly full after meals, reflux, heartburn, trouble digesting meat, brittle hair and nails because of the mineral insufficiency and deficiencies that can contribute from that. Low appetite in the morning, like I said, nutrient deficiencies which are related. So these are the symptoms you can look out for low stomach acid, potentially. And having food poisoning because of the antimicrobial peptides that are not being produced as readily as a result of the insufficient stomach acid acidity. Why are the reasons? Stress, H. pylori, which we cover in Zion. There's a full masterclass on it. We won't be teaching H. pylori live. That'll be something you guys can watch in your own time. Antacid use, antihistamine use. Histamine's important for actually triggering acid secretions. That's something important to know. Histamine's not bad, like all bad. Like histamine is important for the trigger of acid secretions, hydrochloric acid. So if you're constantly pumping in antihistamines every day, you may contribute to that being worse. So this is covered in more detail in Zion, but just to give you guys some introductory things, always start at somewhere easy to get your clients eating in a calm, grounded state. Chew your food properly. Avoid rushing. We can do some gentle support with some lemon or apple cider vinegar if there's no histamine issues. I like to minimize fluids with meals. Zinc, potassium, B1, and sodium do play some roles in hydrochloric acid production, some minor to moderate roles. So improving those nutrients can have some small effect. And I do like digestive enzymes generally when we're having our bigger meals above 750 to 1,000 calories plus to give some extra support, or when the person is in a antimicrobial or healing phase and is quite reactive to foods. It's not a fix, just a helper. This doesn't get to the root cause of it necessarily unless we're talking about the nutrients, accept, and stress, and eating in a calm state. The last phase that we'll cover before we'll finish off is the third phase, which is the intestinal phase. This is when we're in the small intestine and where the majority of absorption occurs. We talked about the jejunum. Have you ever been punched in the jejunum before? But before the jejunum, which are very fun words to say, if you guys just want to say them out loud, feel free to. It's quite fun. There's the duodenum. And then after that is the ileum, which is not as fun to say. At the end of the jejunum is the ileocecal valve, which controls the flow of digested materials. You absorb most of the nutrients that you intake in food by the villi. Now, this area is supposedly supposed to be more sterile. And that is where we can have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. We have the colonization of bacteria that's not supposed to be there up there. Then when food hits it, triggers a fermentation, and we can get gas production like sulfur and methane and other things. Here's a nice image. You see the stomach. This is not how your body looks, by the way. It's all like in very compacted space. It's not a vertical line. It's just for demonstration purposes. Coming to the small intestine, it's very long, by the way, very, very long, your intestine. Is it tennis court length? Someone want to check that? Just a cool fact. You're seeing a lot of mineral absorption here. You're seeing a lot of water absorption and metabolism. And there is a little bit more detail on the functional anatomy of small and large intestine in Zion. You fucking me with the 48 football fields. Most definitely. Most definitely. I have a gut that 48 football fields long. Definitely. Here it is, what it technically kind of looks like. So now when someone describes gut or stomach pain, or rather gut pain, try and get them to pinpoint, hey, where do you feel it? Get them to lift their shirt if it's okay, and try and get them to point where they feel it, because it's going to help you isolate the particular area that they feel pain in, because that may then change what you communicate to them. Nice, Matan. In the small intestine, a variety of different hormones are made, and they all have different actions, as you can see here, to help digest food. We have bile, we have moving things along like motilin, which is the nomenclature of motilin, which means there's a lot of words I say that I'm sorry that's if you guys don't understand them. Nomenclature means like the meaning of a word, like the definition of a word. I like to show you guys how to speak more English because I've just learned English myself recently. Motilin, think motility and movement, which helps you understand, oh, that's a hormone that stimulates movement. Not needing here to memorize and read all these out like a textbook. Be aware of it. I think cholecystokinin is going to be a common one you guys are going to see. Also, you need to know your pancreas has a role at not just releasing insulin and glucagon to regulate blood sugar, but also digestive secretions. These are some of them. Your stomach got too acidic, you would die. Has anybody thought why that doesn't happen? Partly the reason is because of bicarbonate, which neutralizes acidity. This is also why people can get really sick after eating it to help them with their performance. We have amylase made in our mouth that breaks down carbohydrates. We have it from our pancreas into our gut. Lipase breaks down fats. Proteases break down protein. Think P and P. Protein for P, proteases for P. So when you look on the back of a digestive enzyme bottle, you can analyze and see what enzymes are in there and their mechanism of action. This is the practical application. I think I was looking at Sarah's digestive enzyme bottle, and then we looked at my enzyme bottle. We saw the Bioceuticals practitioner grade versus the shelf bought. Seemingly, the one Sarah had was like, yep, this has good enzymes in it. We learned about what they do. Good. Now you know what they're doing. Some of these enzymes will help break down. Like look at the back of a lactose-free milk carton. It's not actually technically lactose-free. It has the lactase enzyme added in there to help break down the milk protein lactase. So try and look on labels a bit now. Try and look on your bottles and try and connect the dots here and how these things are working. Oh, there you go, Sarah. Well, it just had different quantities. Bicarbonate before training session gives. Sarah has the best enzymes in the world. She's enzyme queen. That's the best compliment I could give somebody. Here's what it looks like. You can see the location of where that's happening. Now, number 3, I'll just draw attention to it, is good bitter stimulation. So bitters are helpful for a number of ways. They help stimulate bile. The mechanism, they help stimulate bile. Good bitter stimulation at the start of the meal is a habit that you would probably encourage yourself and most of your clients to do. It's something we're doing, for example, with Matan. Yeah, cool. So we see a blend here. What do we see here? Okay, cool. Ox bile. That's a very common one when we look at comparing or getting a kind of a semi-bioidentical version of human bile, betaine hydrochloride, enzyme blend, pancreatin. Okay, that's their blend. Amylase, protease, lipase. We'll break it down carbs, protein, and fat. Cellulase will help break down the fiber wall. Bromelain isn't actually like a single enzyme. It's like a group of proteolytic enzymes. Can be helpful to break down like excess mucus. Cool. Now, all I would recommend as well is just comparing this against like different brands and just looking at the quantities, because you can get higher quantities for like similar price if you know which ones to pick. But digestive enzymes, like, oh, my camera switched off. It overheated. I'm on fire fares. That's why. Leave it at that. Poor pancreatic function can be seen: bloating, fatty, oily stools, poor nutrient absorption, unstable blood sugar. You might see the top line of that being low energy and unexplained GI distress, although these are very general and can have many, many different influences. Let me just check where I am right now. The gallbladder and bile, remember the liver stores bile, the gallbladder releases it, helps break down fats, fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, K. It's important for estrogen conjugation or deconjugation, has a number of different roles. When you think of it, I would like you to remember its role in fat digestion and its antimicrobial peptides. People get their gallbladder removed, like that's a normal thing to do. What do you think might happen if someone does that? What type of support do you think your client might need if their gallbladder is removed? Funny face. Right, exactly. Thank you for actually answering my question. That's not rhetorical. Well, it's going to be the way the fat intake, the macronutrient intake of their meals is going to be important. They may get steatorrhea, which is like as a result of high fatty meals, they can get diarrhea. They might not be able to absorb fat-soluble vitamins as effectively. They may have a higher propensity towards gastrointestinal issues like infections, food poisoning. They may need to consider a bile supplement for their high-fat meals ongoing. Personally, I just recommend they go to the black market and get a new gallbladder, Futurama style. Can you do it? I actually have 2 gallbladders. I've done it. I have a guy. Symptoms of poor bile flow: constipation, pale stools, because bile gives some of that color to your stools. Floating stools, too much. You can have, because fat creates more buoyancy, and so if you see those stools floating at the top, hopefully you don't see your client's stools. That would be a very interesting service that you offer. But if that does happen to them, then you can consider the role of bile and the gallbladder. This is not an exhaustive list. We're just introducing you to the topic. Dehydration, low stomach acid, insulin resistance, low fat intake, estrogen dominance, SIBO, and SIFO. One thing we can do to do that, to help address that, is going to be starting your meals with bitters. We can consider, we're going to address those nutrient deficiencies as well. And here is a little practical support list that you guys can use to help your clients with bile release, with gut health. One thing I'd consider as well is the nutrient factor of this is the role that choline plays in phosphatidylcholine, which helps bile flow and fat digestion. I try not to rely too much on supplementation for these things because it's more of a temporary band-aid. Like, yes, we can use taurine and digestive enzymes and TUDCA, and we can use that to help the client while we get to the underlying body systems that are driving these issues. That's not right, Sarah. I'm sorry that happened to you. You don't get paid enough for that. That's just not right. Finishing off with the large intestine. There is some vitamin metabolism that happens here that doesn't happen in the small intestine, interestingly. So when people get colorectomies or they get part of their colon removed, then you need to consider which nutrients are going to be at risk of deficiency and the symptoms related to that. K2, biotin, B5, B9 plays a huge role in metabolism of bile salts, hormones like estroblome, which plays a role in beta-glucuronidase and metabolizing estrogen, particularly in our women who have excess estrogen. And a large proportion of beneficial bacteria will be stored here as well. When you get a stool analysis, you're primarily measuring the acute picture of what's happening in the large intestine. A stool analysis isn't actually like that great of a test to get because it is so variable. I mean, it's like one of the better tools we have, but it has its certain limitations with how acute it is, how its inflammatory markers are probably the better things that you're getting from a stool test. But when you're looking at like the bacterial strains that are in it, bacterial strains on a GI map like are so transient and can be so dependent on your current environment and the things that you were just doing. So just something to keep in mind. We're not teaching the stool analysis right now, but just something to keep in mind. And we are in the colored section right here. And so I just encourage you guys to pay attention to your own body self-awareness. What do you feel right now? Do you feel any ache, any pain, any awareness in your gut right now? When you get stressed and nervous, where do you feel it? When you have a gut pain or a gut issue, where do you feel it? Start to bring attention to what part of the colon, small intestine, or stomach you may feel it in. And actually, I think, wowee, can't believe I did it. I didn't think I was going to finish it. Only 21 minutes over. Incredible. We're not really going to get much into the gut microbiome now. You can, just to bring it up, most of it is sitting in the large intestine. You're going to have such a high diversity of bacterial strains. Some of them confer positive, some of them are more neutral, and some of them are dysbiotic, which confer a negative detriment to the host. You are the host, by the way. We will produce short-chain fatty acids, which have anti-inflammatory effects. They are produced in more propensity from soluble fiber, for example. They help produce vitamins. Butyrate is one of the short-chain fatty acids which exert potentially anti-inflammatory effects because they fuel colonic cells. So this is where some of the research potentially is explained on cancer, colon, gut diseases, and fiber intake. Part of that may be explained by this short-chain fatty acids that are being produced. And lactobacillus strains, there's just so many strains, different strains of beneficial bacteria confer protection to you, and they help protect you against harmful pathogenic dysbiotic bacteria that may colonize, including E. coli or Giardia, which is from contaminated water or fecal matter. So you have this, you are a living organism, but within you is a insane amount of living bacteria that are being fed based on your environment, what you feed it, and the state of your body in stress. And that infers how strong or weak your body is against defending against external pathogens and supporting you. And how many bites do you have per meal, Fez? And how quickly do you eat? Let's put that in the chat for me. We have more information in Zion about constipation, more of a deep dive. Just an important note that I'd like to make about it is that enterohepatic, so hepatic, you can think of the liver, we can get these recirculations of toxins when we are not defecating frequently, at least once a day. Not only does this contribute to the proliferation of estrogen dominance, the recirculation of bile via the hepatic system, hepatoportal veins and all of that, they actually partly explain why people's mold mycotoxin exposure and the symptoms they experience can continue to go on because bile is constantly being recirculated and endotoxins is constantly being recirculated back into the body. Part of the treatment for mycotoxins and mold is actually inhibiting this system and is encouraging the release of bile. There's a certain pharmaceutical drug that they give you to actually release more of this so you get less recirculation of these toxins. It's very interesting. It's in It's in the new module. So I want you to consider constipation to be a risk factor, red flag for you to look out for, not just for our female-related conditions, for basically any type of endotoxins that could be recirculating through this process, basically just making the symptoms worse. This is a zoomed out view. I love this diagram to finish off. This is a zoomed out view of the nutrients on the left here. Let's say you look at starch, which is not a nutrient. It's like a composition of food. Within that, we have different types of carbohydrates, dextrins, oligosaccharides. These are like long chains of carbohydrates, just all these like little, like a very long chain. Like you have monosaccharides, disaccharides, polysaccharides, oligosaccharides. What I learned for $40,000 in 4 years of university was being able to tell you this right now. So yay me. This is a bit of a joke. You learn a little bit more than that. Hopefully more in Trinity. Longer chains takes longer to digest, or they need to be chopped up more, bit of more of an enzymatic process. So we have here, we have our, can I zoom in more? Yes, I can, Matan. We have amylase, pancreatic amylase, brush border enzymes, which are enzymes produced literally at the level of the gut, like we saw with that epithelial tissue in the small intestine, lactose, maltose, sucrose. You just have all these beautiful enzymes that are helping break down these different fibers and carbohydrates, because there's different types once they're broken down, like, you know, glucose, fructose, galactose. Then once they're broken down, they can be absorbed more readily. And then we just see, it goes on here. We can see proteins, proteases, peptones, and all the different enzymes on the right. So consider this like a big top-down summary view of the enzymes and the compounds that are like interrelating and connecting together. And then we see fats here. Very cool, yeah? This is all happening inside of you. Not going to go down the rabbit hole too much, but this immune response and protection all begins even before birth with the mother and father's genetics and the mother's pregnancy state, whether a mother has cesarean or a natural birth has influences to the immune system development later in life, and breastfeeding as well. We generally recommend, when I say we, I mean the World Health Organization, generally recommends at least 12 months of breastfeeding, and some research may even find benefit up to 18 to 24 months. The immune system benefits that come from that are quite varied and wide, and it's something to consider for your future children. Some practical notes. When we say 1 cup of cooled potatoes, it can be cooled rice, cooled potatoes. Why do we want this starch to be heated then cooled? What's happening? Resistant starch, correct. Resistant starch. And that's going to help confer a positive benefit to the host to help make more short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, and actually help curb the insulin glucose response as a result of having a higher carbohydrate meal, generally speaking. So fiber can be problematic with people with SIBO, so consider that. With gut issues, it can actually make things worse. But generally speaking, in a healthy gut state, 14 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories is what some of the newer research is citing. And the more varied your diet is, the more wider variety your microbiome strains will be. Generally speaking, you might provide more benefit to yourself and more protection to your immune system by having a wider variety diet and